Hello there everyone. In today's tutorial I want to show you how you can capture a cabochon using Kumihimo techniques. And this is how mine looks. So I've got a nice oval cabochon in here. It's flat on the back where a cabochon is and domed on the front. And then I've got a Kumihimo braid going around the side of the cabochon, and then beads there incorporated into the braid that we then use to capture the cabochon afterwards. Then also I've made my bail here using Kumihimo, a different kind of braid. So the whole thing is made with Kumihimo and it's really nice and securely in there. So you can obviously make this to look however you want, use whatever materials that you want to. Change up the colours and the materials themselves. So if you want to learn how to capture your cabochon using these techniques of Kumihimo, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to be needing. So first of all I have two Kumihimo discs here. So what I'm actually going to be using is both my round disc and my square disc in this case. You could do the braids on the same disc if you want to. It just makes it a bit easier to use the two separate ones. I'm going to be using both discs for this, with the kind of braids that I'm going to be using to capture the cabochon. And then as for the cords here, this is the same cord, I'm just using two different colours. This is 1mm satin cord. I'm going to be using this throughout the whole piece, and I'm just using a black colour and a silver colour. That's just what I thought would look nice. You can use whatever colours and even what cord you want as well. This is just what I'm using. And then finally here we have the beads that we're going to need. These are 4mm metal spacer beads, just regular rounds, and I'm using a copper colour because I thought they would go nicely with the colour scheme and capture the cabochon nicely as well. So the cabochon that I'm using is just an oval one, and it's 4 by 3 centimeters across. That's just the one that I'm using to demonstrate with. You can use other cabochons, obviously other sizes. You'll need to adjust the braids and the count of the beads in that though, and the length of the braids, but you can use other ones. You can use rounds, and kind of the rounds and oval shapes, this will lend itself really well to capture those kind of cabochons. So these are the materials that we're going to need. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So as for the cords we'll need, in total we'll need to have 8 lengths of cord of about 1 meter each. And what I've got here, I'm working with the two different colours, so I'm going to be using 4 lengths of my black colour, so the one, and then 4 lengths of my silver one. So that's just if you want to work with two different colours, but we'll need the 8 lengths in total. And then what I've done is put all the cords together on one end, so the whole 1 meter length there, and then I've measured from the end, from that end, about 25 centimeters further up all the cords, and I've just tied a regular overhand knot. This is just temporary to keep them together for now, and then what I'm going to do is start braiding from this point onwards, so with my long lengths. So we need to put this knot down through the disc with the short lengths hanging down underneath the disc as well. So this is then how you want to set up your disc. Now if you're just using one colour, you just want to put one cord on each side of every dot all the way around the disc there. If you're using two colours like me, you need to decide what you want to be the outside, the border colour, and then the inside colour. In my case, my black one is going to be the border colour along the outside of the braid. So that means the border colour there, you need to place one on each side of the top dot, and then on each of the side dots there, you want to put your other two below that, so one below each side. And then the mid colour, you want to put one on each side of the bottom dot, and then on the top of the side dots there. And that's how you want to set up your colour combination. Now, like I explained, I have my knot down through the middle of the disc, and then the short length of all my cords coming out on the back side of the disc as well. So I've also then added my beads already, because we're just going to pretty much go straight into adding beads into the braid as well. I've added them only on the top 2 cords here. So the ones that are going to be my outside border, but only on these top 2, not the side ones. So every time we're using these after the first round, we need to incorporate the beads into the braid as well. And in my case, to fit around the cabochon that I'm using, so the size cabochon and the shape, and also the materials that I'm using here, what I've done is added my 4mm round beads here onto each length of cord on the top ones, and I've added 26 on each of them. So I've got 26 on the one on the left side and 26 on the other one as well. Now that might be different depending what materials and what cabochon you're using, so you'll have to try that out for yourself. So then to start the braid, what I'm going to do first is do one full go around, twice actually, before we start adding beads in, just to show you and also just get the braid going. So I'm going to start with my top right one, and these are the ones with beads on, but we're not using them just yet. Going to bring that out of the disc down over the middle, and it's coming from the right side, crossing over to the left side and going below that pair on the left side there. And then we need to take the top left one, going over towards the right side of the disc, below the pair on that side, and then we'll go to the bottom right one. So every time I'm starting with a pair, top or bottom, I'm taking the right one first, bring that across to the left side, on top of the pair on the side there, so above it, then the left one on the bottom across to the right top. So there we go, that's the top and the bottom ones. So now we need to deal with the side pairs here. So the pair's just around the dot, so I'm taking the one just above the dot there on the left side, bringing that down, stay on the left side of the disc, so on the left side of the dot on the bottom there, place it on there. Now the one below the dot on the side, bring that up towards the left side of the top dot, just like that. Then I'm going to just bring these in, because you can see we have an open gap here. We're going to close up the gap by just taking them in towards the dot one space each. Do the same thing on this side. The top one just above the dot comes down, stays on the same side that you took it from of the disc, so on the right side here. The bottom one below the dot comes up and stays on the right side. Same thing over here, we have that gap, we need to close it up. So just nudge these in towards right below, right next to the dot there. So this is basically the original position we're in now. We've done one full go around. And what I want to do is do one more, and then I'm going to start adding in the beads. So I take my top right one down towards the left, top left one down towards the right, bottom right one up towards the left, bottom left one up towards the right. So when we're dealing with the top and the bottom pairs, we're always going the opposite to where they're coming from. On the side, the one just above the dot comes down, stays on the same side of the disc. The bottom one goes up and stays on the same side of the disc. Close the gap. Always just focusing on the dots all the way around the disc. On the other side, the one just above the dot comes down, stay on the same side of the disc. The one just below the dot comes up, stays on the same side of the disc, and just close up the gap here again. We've done another full go around, and again we're still in the original position now. The only difference is now the beads, the cords of the beads are back up towards the top. The first go around we did, they ended up on the side there, but now they're back up here. And that's what we need them to be. Every time we're going to add in a bead from now on is whenever these cords with the beads on are at the top. So I'm going to start doing that now. So it's the same thing we're doing, the exact same technique and go around we do. But now, as I'm taking my top right one first, as I'm releasing it from the disc, I also just want to drop down and release one bead there. Let it drop all the way down to the middle. Before we place the cord in the disc, we need to make sure we just tuck this bead in. So the actual cord is coming out in between the two cords on the side. So what we want to actually do is push this bead down between those two cords on the side, like that. So they go underneath there, because that means it's going to end up on the outside of the braid. And then those cords on the side kind of help keep that in place. We do the same thing with the other one on the top, so the top left one. As you're releasing the cord, release one bead and tuck that in between those two cords on the side where your cord that you with your beads on is actually coming out in between. Tuck it in and then place the cord with your beads out to the opposite side there. And that's all that's really different when we're adding in the beads. Now we just continue. The bottom right one goes up to the left, bottom left one goes up to the right, and we complete this go around in the exact same way that I showed you before. What you just want to make sure, close the gap here, is when you do the side cords, like I just did, you just pull them in towards the middle to make sure they kind of come above the bead and don't end up wrapping around the bead. Just making sure they're tucked in nicely, so they're going to really hold that bead down securely in proper place. Up and then close up the gap. There we go, now we're in that place where the beads have ended up on the side, so we're not using them this go around. So we need to do another full go around without adding in beads to then get the cords where I have the beads on in the right position, so back on the top there, to be able to use them again. So just the exact same thing as I've showed you before. Do one full go around here, close the gap on the side. Not worrying about any beads at this round. And close up the gap. And now we're back in the original position where the cords with the beads have now ended up back on top again. So they're up here. And that means whenever they're on top, we need to bring a bead into it from now on. So basically it's every other go around. We're going to add in a bead whenever these have ended up on the top. And you just do the same thing. Release one bead as you're releasing the cord. Let it drop down, tuck it in between the two cords on the side there. And then continue in the same braiding technique. Let your bead drop down as you're releasing your cord and then tuck it in. You have to make sure you tuck that bead in on the side, because that's what's going to trap it in place. Then we continue, finishing up this round the exact same way. Just like that, close up the gap. Making sure when we do the side cords here that they just come around the top of the bead. And close up the gap. So that's another full go around. And there we go. And our beads, because we just used them, the cords with the beads are now ended up on the side. So that means we need to do one more full go around without beads, where they're then going to end up on the top, and then we need to use them again. So that's what you want to keep doing now. Keep building it up like this. Remember to add in your bead every time the cords with the beads end up on the top. And then you're going to have your braid coming out on the back here with your beads nicely separated throughout your braid on the side. And keep going like that until you used up all your beads. So I now kept going with my braid here until I've used up all my beads on all the cords that I had beads on there, and then your braid is going to come out of the back looking a bit something like this, where we still have the longer tails down at the bottom of that braid. And then all we need to do here, what I'm going to do is take this off the board for now temporarily, and I'm just going to take it off and tie a knot up here. What I ended up with, just to remember, is just like the beginning, if you remember, I did a couple of go arounds before we added in the beads, just about 2, and we just want to do the same up here after we added in the last beads. So do a couple of go arounds without the beads, and then take your cords off the disc and tie a regular knot, temporary one, just like we did down here. So now that I've taken my braid here off the disc, then we have a braid in the middle with the beads running down the side, and then on each side I tied these temporary knots. On the first one we have the original cords, the length of cords that we left before we started the braid, and on the other end we still have a decent length of cord left as well. So this is where we're at now. So now what we need to do is actually cut off some more cord. So in this case I'm still using the satin cord. I've cut off 2 lengths of about 80 centimeters each. So this is what we're going to be using next. So these are separate pieces of cord, and what I've done with these is on one end, on each of them, I've just put a lighter just quickly across the end, and then just roll it between my fingers to create this kind of needle. Because what we need to do now is go through our beads again, and this just makes it much easier. So you can do that if you're using a synthetic cord like me. Also, what I want to mention is, say for your beads here, I know that I can get another length of my 1mm satin cord through my beads that are already in the braid. If you find that you can't because your beads don't have large enough holes, you could always use a different kind of cord here. So a thinner cord like an S-lon or something, a 0.4mm S-lon would work, and you could always just stick with the same colour scheme so it will still blend in. But these are the ones that I'm going to be using. And then what I'm going to do is take my braid here, and then one length to begin with. We're working with one length of a new cord at a time, and then we need to go through all our beads with this one. So just all the ones on the same side. So I'm starting on one end of my braid and taking this kind of needle that I created, just go through each bead. Like I said, making this little needle really does make a difference. If you're using this kind of cord, pull it through nicely, and then we just want to keep going through every single bead. So jump from the one I just went through right over to the next one in the braid, and if you struggle a bit like here, I got the end out but I'm struggling to grab it with my hands and fingers, so what can really help is just getting some chain nose or flat nose pliers to grip it properly and then pull it all the way through. So like this, and we just keep going like that. Jump from one to the next and then pull it through there. So we're basically sewing from one bead to the next, and then we want to do the exact same thing once we've gone all the way down here. Just do one side at a time, but then you can switch over to the other side with your other cord that you cut ready, and then start going through these beads on this side the same way, but with a separate cord. So again, just push it through and pull it through a ways, and then jump straight over to the next bead. And like I said, just do one side at a time, that's fine. Working your way all the way down to the other end of the braid with both cords. When you then got your cord all the way through all the beads here on both sides, then you can just slightly see them there. Then what we need to do now is start tightening this up. So you can start from either end, and basically what I personally recommend doing is just keeping hold of your cord, and instead of pulling it too much, just kind of rather gently start pushing the beads together. You can see by pushing them closer you get a natural kind of curve in there. And then we can just start from both ends. If you want to hold on to both ends of your cord of the same side there, so we don't end up pulling the cord all the way through the beads, even though they're quite tight in there. And then just gently push all the beads downwards towards each other, so we get this curve in there. Go from both sides and just work your way down. So when you've then gone all the way around all the beads and they're nice and close together now, you can see we kind of ended up with this more circle shape. Obviously that's not quite going to fit the cabochon just yet, but just it doesn't have to be perfect shape just yet, because we can customize that to when we get to putting it around the cabochon. But then what I want to actually do as well is go to the other side and start doing the same thing. For doing this, you just have to be aware of one thing, of the actual braid here. So if you're using two colours like me, you're actually going to see that you have two different sides to it, and both sides aren't exactly the same. So both sides are nice in their own way, but you just want to make sure that the side that you want to be facing outward is the one that you then make sure gets faced outward like that. As we then go and tighten the other cord as well. So I'm then going to go on and do that, grab hold of the other ones. So each end of them, let's grab the right ones, the ones that are on the outside. And then you just want to basically start doing the same. And then like I said, just make sure that when you do this, you're just gently pushing your braid so the side you want to be outward domes out a bit. And just do the same thing. So push all these beads closer together. And then we're going to end up with more of that kind of bezel that's going to then end up going around the cabochon. When you then pull that side close as well, all the beads there, push them nice and close together, you can see we have this more proper shape and this actual bezel where the cabochon is going to sit inside here. So the actual braid is doming out a little bit from being pushed inwards there from the beads. So it's doming out on the outside, and then on the inside we have this concave a little bit that's going to fit the cabochon just perfectly. So now what we need to do is start incorporating the cabochon. So I'm going to get that out here, and then I just want to place this down. We can see it's going to fit pretty perfectly where the beads are going to meet right there at the top. And then what I want to do is start on one side. So in this case I'm just starting on the front. I grab the two cords, so the one cord but the two ends of the same cord that are coming all the way through this side of the beads, and then I want to just take them across each other and tie a regular knot here at the top, and then just tighten that nicely, making sure that all the beads are pushed properly nicely close together there. Just going to sit like this and then tighten it nicely, and I'm going to just tie a second knot. Just to make sure it stays in place. So we're going to have this knot right here at the top. So there we go. This is going to be the front of the cabochon. So now what we need to do is tighten the back as well. So you can just, obviously when you're then tightening the back, you need to make sure the cabochon is already in there, because that's what's going to capture it in place. So we then take the two cords on the back here. So the same cord but the two ends that are running through all the beads on the back side. And then we do the same thing, put them across the middle, tie a regular knot, and then you want to tighten this down, and as you're pulling this knot tight, make sure that all of these beads are pushed nice and close together so we get this. Basically the beads are going to make sure that the braid is going to hug around the edge of the cabochon, and it just takes a little bit of working with here to make sure it sits in place, and obviously the cabochon is going to stay in there. So just take a bit of time, get all of it sitting correctly. So you have all the beads on the front there, holding it in place. We want to make sure that there's not going to be too much risk of it slipping out, or no risk really. So you really want to pull tight. You can see I want to push the beads a little bit closer together. Just to make sure it gets a nice grip there on the cabochon. And then, when you seem to think it's quite good how it is, then I'm just gonna put a finger on this knot so it doesn't really loosen up while I'm tying the second knot to keep this one in place. And then just tie the first one properly. It can be a little bit fiddly, but it will work. And then tighten the other one down to tighten the whole thing up. Make sure the knot stays where you want it to be. So like that. And then basically there we have the cabochon captured from tightening these beads around. You can see as well it gives a nice decorative edge, and then with your braid going around the whole edge, kind of creating this bezel. So this is where we're at now. We've actually captured the cabochon in place. Obviously what we have left are the actual cords that we've just tied knots with, both on the front and the back. So these, but then also all of these that made the original braid sticking up. And like I said, these two temporary knots to keep them in groups. So now what we need to do is deal with all of these cords and also be able to make a bezel so we can then start using it. So before we undo these knots up here, what I just want to do is secure the ends of my braid in place, because if we just undo these knots now, chances are the braids on the ends will start coming undone. We don't want that to happen down the side here, obviously. So what I'm going to do is use these cords that I just tied knots with to get my beads closer together to set the whole cabochon in place there. So I'm going to use the ones at the front and the ones in the back here. So I'm going to start with the ones coming from the back. So I take those, I'm on the back side, taking one goes around one side of these knots and one around the other side. So they come around to the front, and then I'm just going to put these out of the way for now. And then what I want to do is take the two cords that are coming from the back there, keep them below the knots on my braid, the ends of my braid there, and just tie them around the front, a regular knot, one over the other there and through to get a regular knot. And then I'm going to tighten this down, just get the other ones out of the way, and then tighten it nicely so it sits right below those knots here. And that's the first one. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. So make sure the two that we just used here, just going to keep them out of the way, because I then want to turn it around. Do the same with the other two cords. So these are the ones that are coming from the front right there, the front knot. One goes around the one side, the one that's naturally coming to that side, and the other one comes around the other side. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. So just lie it down, and then take your ends across the middle, tie a regular knot, and then tighten this all the way down towards the back. Again, tighten that nicely, and on this I want to just do one more on top of this, so basically a double knot, just to secure it in place. And I know this knot is going to stay, because just doing the one isn't going to be just quite enough. So that back one we've done a double knot, so we have that now, and then we have that one at the front where we just did a single knot. What I then actually want to do is bring this these two cords that we used for the front knot towards the back as well, because we don't really have a purpose with them here at the front. So I want to bring them towards the back. So again, just same principle. Each one goes to its own side. Bring it around that side that's coming to naturally. And then get them across the middle and tie a regular knot. So just a completely regular knot there. Tighten this down. Still below your knots on the end of your braids. And then this one we also want to just do a double one. So this is now, we know this is going to stay in place. And we've then secured off the ends of our braids there really nicely. So when we undo these knots up here, they are now not going to come undone. And we have all these extra cords that we added in to go through the beads, all coming towards the back. So now what we can do is actually go up and undo these knots. So I still recommend doing it gently. So now that we have the knots undone here, we have all these cords that are coming from the original braid on the side, just going upwards there, that we're going to use for the bail. What I just want to do before we start making the bail is get rid of these excess cords that we tied around the bottom here of the bail we're going to make to secure it in place, because I want to get rid of them here while they're on the back, and I can do it nice and seamlessly. So to do that, what I'm going to do is just take one or two at a time here. So I start with my bottom knot. Just make sure it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to get my pair of scissors, and then, because I'm using a synthetic cord, you can only do this if you're using a synthetic cord. If you're using a natural cord, you're going to have to use glue and then cut them down. But what I'm going to do is cut down my cord, so I have about 1 millimeter or 2 left coming out from that knot. Same thing on the other side. So like that. And then I'm going to get my lighter here, because what I need to do is singe down these ends. So we first of all get rid of them nice and securely, but also it seals them in place and seals the knot into place as well, so it's not going to go anywhere. So just get the other cords out of the way, make sure you don't singe any of them. So just gently go down to where the end is coming out. And do it carefully, like I said, to make sure you don't burn any of the other things like the beads or the cord. And then just press the end in once you've singed it a bit, and that seals the end in place, so it's not going to come undone. And then do the other side as well, because we want to make sure this is nice and secure and it's not going to come apart on us while we're wearing it after all the hard work. So that's the first one. Do the same thing with the top one here. Again, just make sure it's nice and tight. Cut down the ends. Same thing, about 1 millimeter or 2 left. Both of them. And then also singe them down. And you get a really nice seal this way. Obviously be careful, because we are working with a naked flame. So be careful with the flame, but also once you've just singed the end, it does get hot, the cord itself. You only hold it on there for a couple of seconds, but it does get a bit hot, so be careful when you push it down. If you don't want to use your finger to just push it down, you can always use your lighter to do it as well. To the side of your lighter. So it's completely up to you what you feel most comfortable with. So there we go. Now these knots are nicely sealed and secured in place, and also because we singed it down and then pressed it down like that, it's going to be nice and comfortable, and there's not going to be anything there that can catch or scratch on anything. So then now that we've done this, what we have left is the cabochon itself, obviously wrapped with your braid, nice and securely in there with the beads. And then we just have all these cords coming from each end of the braid up towards the top, which are the ones that are going to form the bail. So it's now the bail that we need to start working on. So then to start making the bail, what we need to do is just choose what cords that we want to use. Now if you're just using one colour in the original braid there, you've only got the one colour of cord, then that's not really an issue. If you've got the 2 colours like I do, you want to decide what colour you want to use for the bail, or you could also always use both colours and mix them up. That's completely up to you. But what we need to do is then separate them out. I want to use my silver ones here for the bail, so that means the black ones I'm not going to be using. So what we need to do now is get rid of some of our cords here because we've got a bit too many going on. So all of these silver ones I'm going to leave because I'm using those for the bail. What I'm also going to do is, if you're just using one colour as well, by the way, in the braid, what you just want to do is separate your cords out into two halves. So you got an equal amount of cords in both. But then what you want to do is take two out of the other colour there, or the other bunch, towards the back. So in my case I'm just taking these two black ones out from all the other black ones. I'm also leaving them. And then what I want to do is keep all the silver and those two black ones, because we're going to use them to attach at the end with the bail that we're going to be making. The rest of the cords here, that in my case are my black ones, the rest of the black ones, I want to start getting rid of these because, like I said, there's a bit too many cords to be dealing with for the bail. So the way that we're going to do this is, because I'm using a synthetic cord, I can singe them down and get rid of them nicely and neatly. And what I'm doing is basically want to keep hold of all the cords that I'm going to be saving. Keep hold of them so you don't by accident take one of them and get rid of. And then you just start with one at a time. I'm just going to start with this one. Grab your scissors, cut down the cord so you have about 1 millimeter or 2 left coming out there from where all the cords are coming out from. Like that. Put that away. And then what we want to do is singe down the very end of this. So just make sure to bend the rest out of the way so we don't singe down any of that yet. The cords that we want to save and keep using for the bail there. I'm going to take my lighter and then just gently singe down the very end that we have left of that cord we just cut off, and then press it in. Just like that. So do it very gently. Make sure you don't hit any of the cords. And then it is obviously, it's a naked flame, so you want to be careful with this and do it gently one at a time. And also it does get hot, so if you don't want to use your finger to push that in once you singed it, you can always use your lighter and do that. It's completely up to you. But then I want to go all the way around and get rid of all of these cords that are separated out. Just one at a time. And we can easily do this and it'll still be nice and secure, because we got all of these cords are coming from the original braids along the side, including the silver ones in my case that I'm going to be keeping to make the bail. So doing this is not going to come undone, especially because using this synthetic cord I can singe them down, and then doing this seals the ends in place so that makes them nice and secure. So keep going all the way around, getting rid of all these excess cords, so we're left with just the ones we want to use for the bail and the 2 extra from towards the back there. So now I got rid of all those cords that we don't want to be using anymore. You can see it's still pretty nice and seamless there because we singed them down and it's nice and secure as well still. So we only have the cords left that we want to be using for the bail, and then the 2 at the back that we want to tie it off with at the end. So now what we need to do is start making our next braid to then create that bail. And to do that, I want to be getting out my square Kumihimo disc here, because we're going to be making a flat braid to create the bail with. And then also get a piece obviously, and then I just want to separate out the 2 cords towards the back that in my case are the black ones here. Just leave them out for now, we're not going to incorporate them into the braid. But what we then want to do is take all these cords up through the middle of our disc, the ones that we're going to use for the bail. So just like that. And then what we're also going to have is the cabochon that we already captured. It's just going to be hanging down below this hole in the disc. So it's going to actually kind of act as a weight as well. It's going to help with that. But then we need to start distributing our cords here. So you just want to have a look at how your cords are coming out from the top of the cabochon there, and then just kind of put them towards the way they're naturally going. So I'm going to take one that's further towards the top, place it on the top of my disc, and then another one right next to it, starting from the middle of the top line there, and again one right next to that. So just look at where your cords are coming out. You'll be able to see which one needs to go where really, to make it as nice a transition as possible. So we got the 4 at the top, and then what we need is also the 4 at the bottom. The two middle ones go in there, and then one on each side of that as well. So this is then set up for the flat braid that we're going to be doing. And like I said, just have the other two, in my case the back one's just hanging out below along with the cabochon there, and keep them out of the way. So then to make the flat braid now, what we need to do is I'm going to start from the top, and I'm starting with my top two there. I take my right one from the middle, so this one, bring it over towards the left, and then place it in the one on the left side there. The one from the right, sorry, the one from the left in the middle, so we're opening up this gap in the middle there, goes over towards the right. So the one from the right goes over towards the left, and the one from the left goes over towards the right. So that's how they go. And then we need to swap over from the top to the bottom, or the bottom to the top, whichever. So I'm going to take my bottom left one in the middle there, bring it just up over the middle of the disc, so the hole, and to the top of the empty space, but staying on the same side of the disc. So my middle left one on the bottom side goes up to the middle left on the top side. Then I'm going to grab the next one working outwards towards the side of the disc and bring that down into the gap that we just opened with the previous cord that we moved. So in the middle there, go outwards towards the side of the disc. So I'm on the left side, so I'm working my way outward towards the left. Open that and bring that up in the empty slot up here that we just emptied with the previous cord. So that's the first move. And then we need to do the same things on the other side of the disc. So imagine you kind of have a line down the center of your disc. Everything we do on one side, we also do on the other side. So I take, on the bottom here, the one that's to the right of the middle, and bring that up into the empty gap on the top. Take the next one outwards towards the right, bring that down into the gap that we just freed. Out to the side, the very last cord, bring that up to the gap that we just freed up. So this is now how our disc looks. And then what we need to do is just take the side ones here and bring them back into the braid. So the one on my left side I bring down, because we have empty gaps down here on the sides. Remember, we need to have 4 on each side, both the top and the bottom. Just put that in, stay on the left side of the disc. The one from the right side goes down towards the right of all the other cords down here. So this is now one full go around. And that's the basic of how to make this braid that we're going to be using, the flat braid here. So I'm just going to go through it again. So the right one in the middle comes over towards the left from the top side. The left one from the middle comes over towards the right from the midpoint on the top. And then we need to swap over from the bottom to the top. So I start on my left side of my disc. It doesn't matter what side you start on, it's just what comes natural. Bring that up into the empty gap, staying on the same side of the disc. Bring the next one down into the empty gap, and the next one up into the empty gap. And then you can already do the side one now if you want to. So the side one comes down and stays on the same side of the disc. The other side, the bottom one on the right side, in the middle there, goes up into the empty gap. The very next one out comes down into the empty gap, and the very next one goes up on the outside of the top ones. And the side one just comes down up to the end of all the other cords here. So this is how this is the second go around, and that's the basic of the braid. Like I said, I'm going to be doing this 5 times before I then am going to start doing the next step that I'm going to show you. How you want to do yours is completely up to you. You can do more of these. It all depends how you want your bail to look. But I'm going to be doing 5 go arounds on the disc, so I need to do another 3, and then I'm going to show you what I do next. So now that I've done a total of 5 go arounds in my case here, what I want to start doing now is add a little bit of a feature into the bail as well. If you don't want to do that, you can easily just continue this braid until you reach the length that you want your bail to be, and then finish it off the same way that I'm going to show you later on. But I just want to add a bit of a feature, like I said, and that's actually going to be using some of the same beads that I used in the original braid along the side of the cabochon. And I want to add them in to just add a bit extra to the bail, but also help with the shape really. So I'm going to start towards the top. It was the top 2 ones that we first take and cross over towards the side. It's those 2 I'm going to take together first before I start releasing them from the board there. So just take both of those cords, get them ready. I'm going to take 1 bead, and then what we need to do is basically cross our cords through that bead. So I'm just going to first of all put the bead onto one of my cords, and then I'm going to take the other one and cross through that bead, the same one in the opposite direction. So like that, and I know that 2 cords in my case will go through these beads because we did that in the braid on the side. And then we have our cords crossing through that bead in this direction, which is perfect for then releasing both of these cords together from the top of the board there, so the 2 middle ones, freeing up that gap. And then what we just want to do before we then place them out to the side is just pull this bead down to the very middle of your braid, so it's going to sit right above there, the very middle, and then we can place them out on the side here. So that is basically the same step that we did before, taking the middle cords from the top out to the side. We just added in a bead along the way. That's going to add a little bit of feature to the bail. And then now we just continue with the rest of the go around. So I'll take my bottom one there, stick on the left side first, if that's what you do, and then just take them down and up on the board, just like I showed you before. The side one comes down to fill in the gap down here. Same thing on the other side, bottom one goes up, next one comes down, always filling in the previous gap, just like that, and the side one comes down and fills in the gap on the bottom. So that's basically how I've added in my bead in this go around then. So I'm just going to go through that one more time here to show you a bit more up close. So I take the 2 top ones there from the middle, the ones that we take from the middle, and cross over towards the side. It's those 2 we always want to add our bead onto. So just start with 1, take your bead, add that onto one of your cords, doesn't matter which one because we'll be crossing both of them through the same bead. Take the other cord from that middle, cross that through the same bead in the opposite direction. Remember that you need to cross your cords through the bead in the opposite direction to make sure you get it sitting properly. So the ends of your cord are coming out to each their own side basically. And then once we have the bead on, we can release both the cords from the middle there. So this bead is then, when I'm tightening this down, it's going to sit right on top of the previous one, right there in the middle. And then we can place the 2 cords, one on each side, just like we normally do with this braid. And then just continue with your normal braid so the rest of the go around. Filling in the previous gap every time you move a cord. Bring the side one down. And then the other side as well, before we then completed another go around. So just like this. And then you'll be able to see your beads there. It's going to start stacking on top of each other in the middle of the braid. So it's going to add some feature to the actual bail itself by adding the beads, but it's also going to help just in the midpoint of the bail, widen it out a little bit. So it's going to have a nice outward curve, and then once we stop doing the beads, it's going to curve inwards a bit again. And it just gives the bail a really nice shape. So what I want to do is do 5 go arounds in total with the beads. So I've done 2, that means I need to do another 3. So that's the same amount that we did in the first go time there without adding beads in. So 5 go arounds without beads, 5 go arounds with the beads, and then once we've done that, I'm going to show you the rest of the bail. So now that I added in those 5 beads in with the braid there and done 5 go arounds with the beads, then what I just want to do is do some more go arounds on my braid without any beads, just to do the back end of the bail as well. And then we just continue the exact same way that we did before we started adding beads in, just without adding the beads in that middle section here. And in this case, I want to do 3 go arounds of just doing the braid without the beads until we then reach the length that I want my bail to be. But like I said, you can do your bail however you want to. So you can make every section, so say the first section and the section with the beads, you can make them longer or shorter. It really depends how you want your bail to look. This is just what I'm doing. So like I said, 3 go arounds for this last part. So now that I've done those 3 go arounds as well, what we need to do now is basically finish off this braid. So we can take it off the board and then finish off the whole bail as well. But if we just take it off as it is, chances are it's going to be very likely to come undone, and also while we're working with it. So what I actually want to do is just tie off the end here a little bit so we can more securely take it off the board and then also finish off the bail. So what I'm going to actually do is take the 2 middle ones on the top, so the ones that we would normally cross over towards the side or where we added a bead to both of them. I'm going to take those 2 And then basically across the middle I'm going to tie a regular knot just like this, and then tighten this down all the way right to the end of the braid. And I'm just going to do this one more time. So basically we're going to have two knots stacked on top of each other here. So that's going to be nice and secure then, the middle two cords. We can just leave them off the board here. Then what I'm going to do is go to the bottom part of my disc, and we have the two cords on each side there. So I'm going to take the two on the left side first, doesn't matter which ones you do first, and then these are coming towards the side of our braid, and they're kind of capturing the last one up on this side of the top part of the disc as well. I'm going to take these two, tie a knot together, down like this, and then just an extra one as well. So we got two on top of each other because the two holds far better than just doing the one. So there we go. And then I'm going to take the last two here on the other side from the bottom and do the same thing. So tie one knot and then just tie another one. So there we go. And now basically it's secure enough that we can take it off the board here, because the others aren't going to come undone because they're trapped in between the knots that we just did. And then here we have the length of the braid that we need for the bail. So as you can see here, the beads aren't really sitting very well because they're kind of crumbling up against each other there because they're very close. But that won't matter, because what we're going to do is fold this backwards into shape, and once we do that the beads are going to kind of just find their place and sit much better, because we're going to bend the bail back here. So you can just mold it into place, and then we're going to have it like that where the beads are in the middle of the braid going around like that. And that's exactly what we want. So just, if you want, take your time and just get that into place. But then basically that's the bail done. So the length of the braid here that we need, all we need to do is get rid of some of these cords, but then obviously also attach the bottom of the braid here to these two cords that we left at the beginning. So in my case the two black ones that I've got left. So those are the ones we're going to use to then attach to the bail, so it can become one full piece that we can actually use. But before we fasten it like that, we have a bit too many cords up here at the end of the bail to be able to fasten it nicely so it becomes nice and seamless and we don't have too much going on around the bottom of the bail there. So what we need to do first is just get rid of some of these cords. Now just look at your cords and separate them out, because they're obviously a little bit all over the place with all the knots that we did. What I want to do first is actually take the two cords that are coming from that knot in the very middle, so the very first knot that we did with the two middle cords from the top, I want to get rid of those first. So just take one at a time and do it gently. Make sure you only do that one and not by accident cut off some of the others or singe some of the others that we need to use. So I'm going to cut this down. Same principle, leave about 1 millimeter or 2. Then we can then take that little bit and use our lighter to singe it in, and that seals it in place as well. All the way like that, and just squeeze it in, and it becomes really nice and seamless as well. The other one from that middle knot, get the other ones out of the way, cut it down, and then we just need to singe it in place so it's going to stay tied still, so the knot isn't going to come undone. Singe it down. And obviously we can only do the singeing of our cords if we're using a synthetic cord like this is. So this is satin cord. If you're using a natural cord that you can't singe like this, what you're going to have to do is use glue and cut them off. But that's why I do really like using these kind of cords that are, so like the satin cord and that. They're really nice quality, I find, and give a really nice finished look, but they're also easy to finish off with the singeing and that. So that's the middle ones done. We now have all these ones left here on the side, and then we basically need to have a look at which cords we need to use, because we kind of have a little bit two legs coming out, one to each side there. We want these to come in towards the middle, so it's going to graduate inwards again, and it's because obviously we don't want them all the way out here. So we need to decide which cords we need to get rid of, so we can then use the rest to tie with those black ones. And really the best way to see that is by looking at those kind of legs. We'll basically have 3 cords coming out from. We want to only keep 1 on each side, just like we have the 2 left of the black ones in my case. We need the 2 left here, 1 on each side. So what I'm going to do is see what looks like it's going to fit best. So I'm going to keep these 2 cords here. So knowing these 2 I want to get rid of the other 4. So just take them out of the way so you don't by accident take one of those and get rid of. And it's the exact same thing. Cut down your cord so you have about 1 millimeter or 2 left. Singe it down. And then seal it in place. And just do that with the same with the other 3 cords that we have remaining. So you have those 2 left, and then the original 2 down here that we're going to attach it to. Now that I then got rid of all the excess cord there, we have the 2 on the top and the 2 on the bottom. What there's left to do really is tie them together so we have the finished bail on top of the finished cabochon there, so we can actually use it. So we want to make sure this is shaped nicely how we want it to be. So the end of our braid here coming back down towards the bottom. And then I'm going to separate them out. One is on one side, and the 2 cords there from the bottom of the bail, the beginning of the bail that we left, also separate them out to each their own side. And then I want to take 2 from the same side and then just take them here and just much like the other times, cross them over each other and tie a knot together like this. And then pull that knot all the way down till it won't go any further. We need to have the bottom of this bail nice and tight against the back of the beginning there. And again, just tie another one to make sure that holds the first knot into place. Because the first one doesn't hold well enough, we need to tie a second one. So that's the first one. Put them out of the way. Do the same thing with the 2 cords on the other side. So across the middle, tie a knot with both of them together, and then pull it down. So your knot is going to sit right there at the bottom. To finish off and tie it in place, make your second knot on top of the first one, just to secure it nicely in place. And there we go. So now it's basically secured in place. We obviously have the excess cord left now as well. We can just have a look at it, see if we're happy with it. It's going to look nice from the front as well, because we got rid of cords along the way. There's far less cords to deal with down here. If we left more cords, we would end up bulking up this area far too much. We'll be able to see it from the front or something sticking out towards the sides. So that's why I prefer to get rid of a lot of the cords along the way. And then you tie these 2 knots now, and nice and secure. Make sure they're really nice and tight. So just double check that. And then it's the same principle, just where they're coming out from. So the knot's there. You want to cut down your cord, just do 1 at a time. Cut it down so you have 1 millimeter or 2 left. Singe it into place. Just like all the other times. And then seal it by pressing it in where it's coming out from. That really seals it in place. So it's going to end up being really nice and secure. And do that with all 3 again. And then once you've fastened off your bail there on the back and it's nice and secure, then you'll have your finished cabochon wrapping with Kumihimo. So the whole part is done with Kumihimo. There's no glue or anything involved to actually capture the stone. Obviously if you want to, you can always add that if you don't feel quite secure enough, but this really is very secure. It's not going to come undone unless you purposely push out the stone, so it should hold really nicely. And then the bail as well, done with Kumihimo, adding the extra beads for the embellishment. And you can quite easily then put whatever you want through there, put a chain or even another Kumihimo braid as well, if you want to make it all Kumihimo. So this is how you capture a cabochon using this technique with Kumihimo. And it's nice all the way around the sides. And like I said, use whatever colours of cord and the beads that you want to, and you can get completely different looks. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to capture a cabochon with just Kumihimo, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this rainbow beaded Kumihimo bracelet. And this is what it looks like. So this is the final look of your bracelet. So you have all your rainbow colours, and the colours are kind of blending into each other, so it gives a really nice effect. and you have an extender chain on here. And then what I've done for this one is, you can obviously get your materials and make this yourself, but I've also put some kits together for this exact bracelet, and you'll be able to find them on my Etsy page and also on my website.